Jada Pinkett Smith, Vanity Fair After Party Video Analysis Part 2. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, and welcome back to an analysis of the behaviours of Jada Pinkett Smith and interactions and dynamic with her family following the recent Oscars appearance and prior to the Vanity Fair After Party, to enable you to understand more about why she does what she does and to extend your knowledge of narcissism. Let's get right back to the footage, commencing with where we left off.
Hugely popular figure within this town, and it was completely unexpected, really, that this would happen. It was a moment, certainly, that seemed to just be a moment of rage taking over and then regret for the rest of the night. You heard in his speech, really, it becoming an apology rather than a celebration of his career. Tonight we have also, obviously, in response to what happened, the Academy itself has ended up issuing a statement. They've said the Academy does not condone violence of any form. Going on to say, tonight we are delighted to celebrate our 94th Academy Award winners who deserve this moment of recognition from their peers and movie lovers around the world. So they clearly too are keen to...
Pausing at 1 minute and 20 seconds. Following the photographs, the couple separate and they walk further along. You'll note that Will Smith attempts to talk to Jada Pinkett Smith, but she actually ignores him. Assertion of control by momentary silent treatment. And of course, as Grand Duchess of being glacial, she then beckons imperiously for somebody to come forward. Assertion of control through physical action. Two ladies appear. I'm not sure who they are, but I suspect they're some kind of assistants working at the Oscars ceremony. Those individuals are therefore likely to be tertiary sources. The interaction whereby Jada Pinkett Smith gesticulates for them, beckons for them to come forward, and they do so, means that, assuming that she hasn't had anything to do with them so far in the evening, they've now been taken into the fuel matrix. As soon as you have an interaction with the narcissist, whether it's in person, through a text message, an email, a brick through your window, then you, if that's the first time you've had involvement with that individual, you are drawn into the fuel matrix. So those two those two non-intimate tertiary sources are now within Jada Pinkett Smith's fuel matrix, assuming they weren't already. You will have noted that Jada Pinkett Smith issues an instruction, and the look on her face is one of haughty displeasure. The instructed minion departs, with control asserted over her, doing the bidding of the Grand Duchess. Will Smith and Jada Pinkett Smith then posed for more pictures, and we then see the non-intimate secondary sources, the Smith children, return after it's clear that a diktat has been issued via the assistant to have the children return. In effect, Jada Pinkett Smith hoovered her children by proxy through the assistant, asserting control over them, and drew them back in. Obedient and under control, all three reappear. They then form up with their father and mother, stepmother, for photographs. You will notice that from observing Jada Pinkett Smith, that she has continued eyeing the photographers in front of her, those tertiary sources, and that there is a smug, haughty look on her face throughout. This maintains her imperious demeanour, whereby she has control over them because they are taking pictures of her. She's in on the group photograph. She's asserted control over the children, the non-intimate secondary sources, because they came back and joined in the photograph. And she's asserted control over Smith because he also has joined in the photograph, which it appears she has been the orchestrator of that. And therefore, at this point, multiple sources in the fuel matrix are under control. Smith, her intimate partner primary source, the children, non-intimate secondary sources, the assistants that mentioned earlier, tertiary sources, and the various photographers, also tertiary sources. She has that control. Of course, As she drinks in the fuel from those tertiary sources as they're taking the pictures, and she has control, her narcissism causes her just to look upon them with that contemptuous, haughty look of hers. Whilst the photographs are being taken, you'll have noted that Willow Smith, fresh from auditions from The Matrix, places her arm around her mother's shoulder. And then Jada Pinkett Smith puts her own hand on that of her daughter. Now, ordinarily you might think, well, that's just simple affection. But understand again that where we see the supposedly affectionate act through the lens of narcissism, it's actually an assertion of control. That where an individual touches a narcissist, dependent on the way that they do that, that might be a threat to control. For instance, I don't like being hugged, and an attempt to hug me is a threat to my control. It might mean that I withdraw, or I move to something else, perhaps kissing somebody instead. That's because I've okayed that intimacy of kissing. If you come and impose a hug upon me, my narcissism interprets that as you trying to control me, and because it's linked to intimacy, I, in particular, don't appreciate being hugged. If I offer you a hug, first of all, count your lucky stars, because it doesn't happen very often, but where I do, it's my decision. I'm able, if you will, to swallow that aversion to the rejection of intimacy in that moment, to use the hug to assert control. Ordinarily, I would look to use alternative manipulations, but it has been known to happen. Here, the placing of the arm on the shoulder just denotes control, and although it's an act which invades the personal space of Jada Pinkett Smith, it demonstrates that her daughter is under control by showing affection towards her mother. But the placing of the hand is the maintenance of that control, as if to say, I'm the one that has you under my control. And ordinarily someone would think, oh, that's nice, she's put her hand on her daughter's hand. Remember, where it comes from a narcissist, what's the real driver is the assertion of control.
Distance themselves from that one moment of aggression. But I have to say, Kate, it is very unexpected to see Will Smith here smiling, a very different man to the one who was picking up his Best Actor award just a few hours earlier. Here you go, Will Smith back on the red carpet, smiling, putting on a united front with his family.
What are the ramifications for him? I mean, he literally walked on stage and punched somebody.
That is the thing, it is a very strange moment. You would think that perhaps there aren't many people really that could get away with something like that, but you saw immediately.
Halting at 2 minutes. The photo shoot has continued. We see, of course, of the family, I have all their photographs taken, that Trey is smiling. Jaden looks like he's completely unsure where he actually is, other than possibly auditioning for a Willy Wonka movie in that suit that he's wearing. Willow also is unsmiling as she's plugged into the Matrix, and presumably because she now knows that the opposite of an apple is an apple. If you don't understand that reference, then you need to listen to my video, Jada Pinkett Smith, The Narcissist's Impact on the Children. Jada Pinkett Smith continues, through what we have seen in the footage, to drink in the fuel, and does so imperiously. Will Smith smiling away, seemingly unconcerned by the earlier slap. Of course, it'll be at the back of his mind, but, like anybody who's receiving attention and flattery, it does make him feel good, and therefore he's drinking it in, not in the way that a narcissist does, but in the way an empathic individual would do. And remember, he has strong narcissistic traits, and therefore pride and vanity are going to be massaged, if you will, by the press attention that he's receiving. The family then breaks, and we see that Jaden and Trey basically leg it, getting as far away as they can rather quickly. Obi-Wan Pinkett Smith strides away. And we noticed that Willow sought to attend to her cloak, but is told in no uncertain terms, with a word and a gesture, that she should put it down, and she immediately obeys. The assertion of control over her as a non-intimate secondary source, and she is compliant. You will also have noticed, or you ought to have done, that Will Smith repeatedly looks towards Jada Pinkett Smith, and he does so with an uncertain look on his face. This is where he is checking in to see if everything's okay with her. He will, of course, have picked up on her demeanour, and words will have no doubt been spoken earlier on. He has that air of uncertainty created around him, the shifting sands that a narcissist either unconsciously or consciously generates in order to make it easier to control you. If you don't know what's going on, if you are in effect surrounded by the fog of war, you're not sure which direction to point in, how you should deal with things, and it makes you all the easier to control. Eroding your confidence, diminishing your self-esteem is part of the way that our manipulations impact upon you. And therefore, we can see that Will Smith, again, moves from being this confident guy who's drinking in the press attention and enjoying the adulation from it, to immediately his moment, it's almost as his balls suddenly shrink again. They're there, they're big, they're round, they're swollen, as he's drinking it all in. Nothing to do with fuel, just simply the receipt of praise. But then the moment that he has to interact with his wife, he becomes meek, uncertain, demonstrating the long-term impact of her control and abusive behaviour towards him. This supposedly confident man who is able to command multi-million-dollar deals with regard to his films, can rap, has won awards left, right and centre, is generally viewed rather is a popular man, although that might have decreased somewhat following recent events, and is generally seen as confident, a nice guy who's good sitting on the sofa in an interview and telling funny anecdotes and is amusing, immediately shrinks in her presence. And there'll be those of you who've been ensnared by narcissists who will recognise such behaviour, that your confidence, your self-esteem, your self-worth evaporated in the presence of the narcissist, that you became somebody else. Because he's so used to being browbeaten by her in one shape or another, and he is essentially nervous and anxious about what the impact of her behaviour might be, he's always got to check in to see if she's all right. This response of his is very instructive. Will Smith then remains for more pictures, holding the Oscar aloft, but you'll notice in the corner of the screen that Jada Pinkett Smith turns to yank the leash in order to assert control over him, but sees that he's otherwise occupied. In that moment, she suffers wounding, because he's not looking at her, his attention is elsewhere, the fuel that her narcissism believes she should receive is not being received, and he's not demonstrating that he's under control. Remember, the essence of control moves moment to moment to moment to moment. And consequently, because she doesn't have control of him in that moment, her narcissism can't use the direct assertion of control. She can't yell out, "Oi, big ears," or "sticky out ears, get over here now." Facade won't allow it. She doesn't turn to somebody and mutter about him under her breath, to indirect assertion of control, through a malign triangulation and smearing. Instead, she just turns on her heel and walks off. The assertion of control through withdrawal. So some excellent insights there as a consequence of the footage that we've seen. I will provide you with even more in part 3. Come join me there.